Welcome to For the Purpose Of, the podcast where we navigate the intersection of technology and the world of education. I'm Ron Houtman.
I'm Keith Tramper.
And I'm Sarah Wood. And today we'll be talking about our big takeaways, noticings, and wonderings from the MACUL Conference last week.
Okay, what's MACUL stand for? You got to do it.
Michigan Association of Computer Users in Learning.
Okay. I know what happens is, after acronyms are around for a while, then people forget what the acronym stands for. So just for our folks that have never heard of MACUL before, just to give you a good definition, that organization's been around a really long time too. I was going through my desk and I actually found some conference materials from the late 90s. So one of these days I'm going to digitize them and put them online so people can read about the wonders of very strange technology stuff that we don't even think about anymore. So what are we going to talk about this time?
So thinking about the MACUL Conference from last week, I'm curious what resonated with you, what made you pause and reflect, or what was a moment that just kind of stood out to you from your conference experience? So I'm curious, Keith, what is your takeaways? I should say, what are your takeaways?
So thinking about the opening keynote, and by the way, the keynotes this year were just awesome. Took a lot out of those. But Sarah, I know you're going to talk a little bit about Cornelius Minor, who was the opening keynote. But one of the things that he talked about that really stuck with me was that the quote that learning isn't linear, it's iterative. And I think my design thinking heart was like, yes, he gets it. The system of learning that we typically use in America kind of says, okay, you do this thing, you learn that, and then you're ready to move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And we'll test you at the end of each one of those things to make sure you're learning it and you're ready to move on. But that's not necessarily the way it goes for every single student. The kids who can play school well will thrive in that and they'll do all right. But it's really iterative. And he used the idea of cheesecake, right? He can ask the entire audience there at MACUL, hey, how do I make a cheesecake? And there's some people that would probably ace it, right? First time, they know how to do it. They have all the tools they need. They'll go out and make a pretty good cheesecake. But most of the room is going to fail the very first time, right? So what happens then is we learn by seeing what others are doing. We get feedback from our coaches, our teachers, from other students. And then we try it again and we make a less bad cheesecake. Right. And then we try it again. And each time it gets a little bit better. And that's what iterative is all about. And it's a big part of design thinking. So I just thought that was a really awesome way to think about learning. So also at the conference, AI was everywhere, but I really saw a focus on taking AI and using it to reduce your cognitive load as a teacher, trying to make your job easier. And just every time I go to MACUL, I'm just in awe of how many amazing teachers we have in Michigan and how many smart people we have that are passionate about reaching their students in new ways. So we just have a really great state and a lot of great educators. So I think those are my big takeaways. What about you, Sarah?
Okay, so I think with the role that I played, behind the scenes with MACUL this year, I wasn't able to really get a deep dive into specific topics and things like that, just because I was popping in and out of sessions. But on the flip side, it's great to be able to be popping in and out of sessions because it truly allows you to hear some of the bigger picture conversations and what people are thinking. And one thing that continually came up, I saw presenters acknowledging it. I saw educators bringing it into the conversations that they were having, is that simply just stating teaching is hard. And I think it was validation for a lot of teachers to, be attending this big conference, professional learning on top of everything that they probably had to do to even get there, writing sub-plans, making travel arrangements, if they have families at home. I mean, there's a lot that goes into even just getting to a conference. And I think it was people almost breathed a sigh of relief when they heard that, you see me, I'm a person and you see this as hard. And I love that. And it just makes me want to include that validation in professional learning moving forward, because we understand that teachers are wanting to learn, they're eager to learn, but they just don't always have the capacity or time to do so. And just acknowledging that is, I think, a great way to make sure that everyone is feeling included in the conversation.
I was really surprised to see how many people got there. And do you, Sarah, I was just wondering, do you know what the number was at all? Any
I
ideas?
don't, but I need to follow up on what that final number was. But it was, I think, nearing 3,000 attendees. I could be off. It might be more than that. But
You remember my prediction, though, right? That
don't.
conferences were going to end.
Yeah. So how's that going for you? That was a great in-person conference.
I was wrong, really wrong about that. So, my thoughts were, again, coming as a big takeaway, again, is how many people were there. How many people are so excited to see each other again? Because it's been 4 years. We don't remember that this is the 4-year anniversary of some sort of large scale worldwide event that may have occurred and canceled the conference 4 years ago.
And the fact that it was in Grand Rapids, too.
In Grand Rapids, yeah. People are so excited just to be back together again, and so am I.
Yeah, and I think another thing that stood out to me, too, were a couple of quotes that came from the opening keynote. Cornelius Minor, who, if you haven't heard him, highly recommend looking him up. He is just an amazing human, and I just feel so honored to be able to have heard him speak. Is that one of the things that he was talking about is, with transforming learning for not only students and teachers, but also teachers, I should say, is to just meet your learners where they're at. And he had said the game is changing. In what ways is teaching different now than what it was even at last year? And that just kind of stuck with me. Like, yes, we are learning differently now, even from a year ago, whether we're adults or we're, children. And then following up with another question he posed was, how do we create the conditions that allow all people to succeed? That really resonated with me, seeing as the majority of the individuals that I'm working with are adults. And am I, as a facilitator, professional learning provider, am I creating those conditions that allow all people to participate and succeed in their learning? So it's just some great reflection points, I feel like.
So, Keith, a moment ago, you talked about the cheesecake. The one thing I was thinking about the cheesecake thing, too, is many times we make assumptions about academic vocabulary that we would just assume that everybody knows what you're talking about. So if I think about somebody who's not so familiar with cheesecake itself, they might go buy cheese, like, cheddar, like a block of cheddar to start out with. That'll make a pretty wild quesadilla. I don't know about a cheesecake. So, I was just thinking about AI again. So obviously the AI overload and overlords are among us with this conference because there's so many people talking about it. Many of the vendors, talked about AI infused this or that or the other thing. So it's been around for released on us for about 1.5 years or so. I think a few things that I asked vendors about and other people were, how do you intend on paying for this? Because running AI models and AI processing is extremely expensive. Those costs have not yet been passed on to educators and the rest of us. Right now, we are playing with all this stuff for free. At the end of all this, there's going to have to be a reckoning about how much money a school district may or may not pay. So if you're talking about any of the like the school AIs or, magic schools, there has to be a business model someplace, sometime. So down the road, everything is not going to be free like we're very used to with some other platforms. So be prepared for that. I think we're kind of still in this hype cycle. A lot of times in education, we don't look very much further than our classroom walls with the applications and things that are getting launched at us. We forget about the businesses out there that have to this day still not found a really compelling use of AI. Believe it or not, it's out there. It's a great text summarizer. It's a great idea generator, but they haven't been able to productize this really yet. Like, what is it? What AI tools have we seen that have been really integrated into things we use every single day? There's a few things like Microsoft is, they're starting to put AI into their products, but the thing you have to go back to the monetary part. Microsoft is selling server space to ChatGPT to run their model on. So they got kind of that cost is already sort of built in and they're just using what they've already got in their data center. So that's a good model. But I think the expectations of what this stuff is going to do for us still hasn't got there. So I think we're in the trough of disillusionment. We will soon probably get to the slope of enlightenment and then the plateau of productivity in one of our 5 phases of the hype cycle. So just look forward to that. And I think the people that are actually winning the war right now in AI are the people that are building picks and shovels. So picks and shovels are companies like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude. I think some interesting other points that you might see, and I didn't really see this talked about the conference, but I'm pretty familiar with it, are search engines. And what are search engines going to look like in the future? Like using things like Perplexity, which is a fantastic search engine. My wondering is, what does the business model for search look like when, right now, if you think about it, everything you do in a Google search is called research. Every time I go to Google and put something in, it's research. Well, what am I doing when I go and put that question into a model like a search engine like Perplexity? Well, it's doing all this really great research for me. It's not just giving me a website to go to. So I think the Google and the Bings and the whoever, I'm not going to say they're going to get their lunch eaten, but advents of tools like that are going to make them seriously change their business model. And big wondering I have here too, just thinking about search, back to AI. How do you monetize an AI response? I mean, like that is, I search for a cheesecake and I do that on Google. My first result's probably Cheesecake Factory, and it's going to give me, the closest location. Are the AI tools going to infuse locations and businesses and maps and things into the AI response as a sponsored result? Boy, is that going to get weird.
Yeah. What do you think the event horizon is on that? Like, are we looking a year out before things start to, go out of business or combine or get bought out? Or
I think we've already seen it with a couple vendors. I think we're really close to this because, again, there's got to be, somebody's got to pay for this. And, there's lots and lots of players. They're all using the same 4 large language models as their engines for this. They all got to pay them. So, it's like this, I don't know, what do you call that? Like it's one of those sponges that you add water to, all of a sudden it gets really big and then it dries out and you're now back to 1 or 4 players instead of 30. We even saw a search engine, which I really liked. It was a paid search engine. It's called Neva, which I think we talked about on the show a long time ago. So it was non-advertiser supported and you'd pay $5 a month to use this search engine. I think, and they went out of business because, again, they just couldn't compete with these, 800-pound gorilla companies that are out there with trillions of dollars. I think even weirder yet, if you look at what, so how many, do you guys both have iPhones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Siri is like the best voice assistant out there from what I've heard, right? Sorry. No. And they need to fix it. So I just saw this in the news today is Google and Apple are partnering to use Gemini, that large language model, to power Siri.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, does that tell you something? So
it kind of makes me think. There's a new song that was released, and I'm blanking on the artist's name. I just know it was the guy who played Steve Harrington in Stranger Things. And it's called End of Beginning. And I keep on coming back to that sometimes in some of these conversations. Like, some things are ending, but it's also a new beginning on that. And it's just, I feel like this is going to be cyclical for a while until things kind of smooth themselves out, where we'll have a lot of things ending, merging, like you're talking about, new beginnings, rebrandings, new possibilities. It kind of makes me go back to thinking about, like, in 2022 when ChatGPT came out. It kind of just came out of nowhere and kind of hit us. And from 2022, was that fall 2022 till now, AI has just blown up as a result. What will happen in the next year? And it's hard to predict that, I feel like, just as these models grow and everything.
Yeah, Terminators. Yep.
I feel like that's still a few years out.
Yeah. We'll see. Well, it could be we're just all batteries, we don't know that.
Feeling burned out from staring at screens? Us too. That doesn't mean you have to miss out on the latest tech for your classroom. This summer, ditch the stuffy conference halls and join us for the Touch Some Grass Technology Conference. The Touch Some Grass Technology Conference is your chance to dive into technology trends in a beautiful outdoor setting. Imagine learning about coding under the shade of a tree, or diving into a book about AI with a gentle breeze in your hair. Connect and collaborate with fellow educators and brainstorm new ideas for your classroom with a fresh perspective. Spark new ideas and tap into creativity under the open sky. Explore the power of choice-based learning through engaging activities designed for all types of learners. Find the perfect tools and resources to transform your classroom, no matter your teaching style. The Touch Some Grass Technology Conference. Step away from the ordinary and step into a world of learning, connection, and fresh air. Visit Ken ISD's Learning Stream to register. Spots are limited, so don't delay.
Hey, it's Keith. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Did you know you can get sketches just for listening and responding? Head over to bit.ly/FTPOPDX to register. Once you're registered, you'll get an invitation for the For the Purpose of community, where you can respond to the following prompt to earn sketches. What trends do you notice in education right now? How do they relate to the technologies you've heard on this podcast? Can't wait to hear what you think. For our current podcast PDXers, this year's session of PDX closes on May 31st. Now is the time to get those last responses in, and be on the lookout for a short survey from us that will help shape the future of PDX. Thanks. Let's get back to the show. I wanted to throw this out there too, because Sarah, I know we talked about this briefly, but there was definitely a strand on professional learning and doing better with professional learning. And I just think that's such an interesting topic. And I just wanted to ask the two of you, what were some of the things that you saw or you're wrestling with that came out of the conference from that?
That's a great question. I feel like teachers were looking for, just in general, innovation, someone to provide different ways of thinking, different ways of processing. One theme that I saw come out of the MSU's MAET presentation was focused around using design thinking as a way to kind of think about tackling that problem. Like, what isn't working? Dream big. What can we do? And then, let's start some prototypes. Let's get something going. And it kind of started with that at the very beginning. Pick out the worst PD you've ever been to. And when I heard that instantly, I went to sit and get for a topic that wasn't applicable to my role. And how often is that blanket PD just given,
Yeah. It makes me think of specials teachers.
Yep.
Right? It's so rare that the PD that's happening, that's a blanket PD, is actually applicable and or engaging in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I think a lot of that, when you think about what adult learners need, which is our fun educator teacher audience that we have, I did like them as that group because I've been part of some of that adult learning stuff with MSU and through the other programs, my other side gig, I guess I would call it. Just it's great to name all the stuff that's terrible around what we're doing to teachers when we bring them to a giant room and just talk at them. We've all experienced that. So why can't we fix these things? So there's just so much really good stuff that came out of sessions like that. It wasn't just the MSU MAET program, but other ones too. I saw that same theme as we know better. I mean, we really know better. Why do we just keep doing this over and over again? For me, it came down to a couple of things. One would be, and just listening to feedback from everybody and probably experience, would be that a lot of times professional learning for educators is not planned. What I mean, it's not planned. It's all of a sudden it just shows up, one day or 2 days or a week before you're put into a room on a topic. Sometimes facilitated by somebody that's brought in from outside that doesn't know your school culture. They don't know what's gone on there before. They don't have a needs analysis that's been created for the staff that are there, those sort of things. So I think there's some really good opportunities there to make professional learning way better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you hinted at something there that systems need to change too, right? Like there's a reason that PD doesn't get like fully planned out ahead of time, right? And the system is like we get a PD day, right? So how do we fill that time slot, and how do you make it work for everybody on your staff if you're the person trying to coordinate all that? And that's just not a fair place to put people, especially that, I mean, they know, the people that are organizing that know better too, but it's all they're able to do at the moment.
And I think with adult learning theory and with providing professional development for educators is that research says it takes 50 hours of professional development to change practice. How often are you ever given 50 hours of targeted PD implementation and reflection and, to change practice? You usually get here's an hour. No, go change the world because of all those constraints that were mentioned.
We all know that professional learning for educators is most of the time just treated as an afterthought instead of being a core part of a professional teaching and learning practice. And if you look at any other business and industry out there with regard to professional learning, let's just say doctors, nurses, surgeons, people that fly planes, people that work in factories and do machine work, they all have some amount of professional learning that is job embedded into what they do every year, provided by their organization. Not as an afterthought and not as 1 hour on a Friday on an early release day. I mean, it's really planned out very well because they know as a learning organization, they have to do this to make their systems better. And I really wish that we would deeply think about that in ways that we haven't in the past.
I think another piece of it too that I saw was, Ron, you talk about LobbyCon all the time, right? Like that's a really important part of what MACUL or any conference is talking with the people there, making those personal connections with people who are in similar positions or tackle the same kind of work. There seems to be value around that. Like we know that it's important for, like we had a conversation about middle school computer science teachers, right? Like that's a really targeted specific area. And there's not a whole lot of people, like maybe one or two if you're a larger district, that kind of hold that title. And how often do they actually get to see what's going on in other districts, right? We know this, we've seen that for a while, and we value that, but we never make it happen for them, right? So how do we get more space and time for educators with the same kind of role to work across districts or take a field trip to somebody else's school and see what's going on? I feel like I'm seeing some strands of that, people trying to make that work. And I really want to see more of that happen.
It was like inspirational and motivating to me to hear these conversations, even though they were rooted in some of the constraints and barriers that educators are dealing with, because it's that reminder to me that there's always room to grow, there's always room to improve, and it starts with that empathy part, which comes back to the whole design thinking and truly having empathy and trying to see the big picture before just putting something together and calling it quality professional learning.
Okay, you may have noticed that we did not have an opening question today. That's because we were saving it for the end of the podcast. We're doing something called Can't Let It Go, where we talk about something that is still on our mind from the conference that we can't let go of. So why don't we start with Sarah?
So one thing that I noticed as I was walking through the exhibit hall, I always stop by the Michigan Learning Channel exhibit booth, and the person, Matt, who is always there, is an amazing person and always willing to engage in conversations, work with educators, helping students develop media literacy and tools for producing content. And so it's every time I talk to him, I walk away with something new. And I first met him, I think 2 years ago, and he had shared this deck of cards that he had created that was teacher facing for prompts to get students, engaged in those conversations. And since then, he has done some revamping on that and produced a second model, deck of cards, I should say, that is all student facing. So prompts for them to work on building media literacy, ways that you can produce their look through the deck separated into one is through the producing and one is through the viewing lens, things to look for and how you're evaluating content and that. And it was just so great to see that, because these are cards that are easy to do. You could set on a desk of an early finisher and they could get started on something with pretty much zero direction from you based on what's provided on these cards. And it's like a regular size deck of cards. And it every time I talk to him and now seeing this new deck, it really wants me to delve more into that and seeing how that could be leveraged from like a professional learning standard. So Ron, how about you? What are you thinking about?
A couple things. One of them, I saw a giant video wall that I want. It was huge. I think it was 10 feet wide by something feet tall. Big.
Not like a projector, though.
No, it wasn't a projector. It was all LEDs. And so you could create this big giant panel wall. It's bright enough to blow your retinas out for any PD that you go to, which would kind of be cool. But I think the one that I kept going back to and looking at was a company that's called 3Dux Design, 3DUX Design. And they had a really cool set of STEM activities, or STEAM as they probably call it themselves. There were lots of little pieces of cardboard with small, they weren't 3D printed, but I think they could be 3D printed little pieces that you can connect now pieces of cardboard together to build things. And it reminded me a lot of some of the other creative toys or creative objects that we've seen to do rapid prototyping or design thinking. Really neat stuff. Plus, they also sold some kits that had motors, so you could motorize some of the stuff or just really expand on their little kits. So I thought it was a really great idea, especially if you're doing any design thinking. So I think that's the one that I just kept going back and looking at and wow, it's just really cool stuff. Keith, what did you see?
Well, that makes me think of Make Do, right? With all their different, what do they call them? Screws, right?
Yeah.
The little plastic screws, that screw cardboard together. It's kind of fun, but yeah. All right, for me, the tool I was walking away with was Adobe Firefly. It's one I've known about for a while, but I never really got my hands on it until recently. And if you don't know what it is, it's a generative AI that builds images for you, and built from Adobe, who is known for really beautiful designs. And I just the quality of pictures and images that come out of there are so cool. And the ability to change the different styles within it are awesome too. So it's so cool that is out there. It is a free thing for us to just go and use, create an account and make it. But just so fascinated by some of those image generators, and Adobe Firefly really seems to stand out.
Can I share Adobe Firefly fun fact with you?
Yes.
The MACUL robots that you saw on marketing and things like that was made with Firefly.
Nice. I wonder who made those.
Yeah, I'll pass on the sentiments.
For listeners that don't know, Sarah is the marketing person for MACUL. So, so she's being humble, but she designed all of that.
But it was important for me to model some of those things that were going to be throughout conference. And if someone saw, wow, that was cool, we could say, hey, did you know that this tool free to use and you can create your own images? And we had a great time sorting through all we call them prototype images. There were some AI fails big time. Quality laughing as a result of those. So it was great on many levels.
Awesome. Well, overall, a great conference, lots of great takeaways. We'd love to hear what your takeaways are as well. If you made it to the conference, or even if you didn't go to the conference, but you have been exploring some of the topics that might have shown up there, we would love to hear about it. So let us know by emailing us at edtech@kentisd.org. And that's it for this episode of For the Purpose Of. Thanks for tuning in. If If you like this podcast, we'd love it if you would rate and review or share it with a friend.
And we always welcome your feedback, and you can reach out at the email address that Keith mentioned and find all things EdTech at bit.ly/IamEdTech, all lowercase. And we will catch you next time on For the Purpose of.
This podcast is a service of Kent ISD, produced by Ron Houtman, Sarah Wood, and Keith Tramper, and edited by Keith Tramper. Our theme music is Neon Nights by Scott Holmes Music, and our ad music is Vienna Beat by Blue Dot Sessions. Telling you what, once you turn 50, start watching freaking birds, man.
Yep.
I don't know what it is with 50-year-olds and birds.